Job Johb, Hebrew, Iwab modern, Iyyov, Tiberian, Ayab is the central figure of the Book of Job in the Bible. In rabbinical literature, Iwab is called one of the prophets of the Gentiles. In Islam, Job Arabic, Abe translate. Ayub is considered a prophet. Job is presented as a good and prosperous family man who is beset by Satan with God's permission with horrendous disasters that take away all that he holds dear, including his offspring, his health, and his property. He struggles to understand his situation and begins a search for the answers to his difficulties. In the Hebrew Book of Job. The Hebrew Book of Job, Hebrew, Iwab, is part of Ketuvim, writings, of the Jewish Bible. Not much is known about Job based on the Masoretic text of the Jewish Bible. The characters in the Book of Job consist of Job, his wife, his three friends Bildad, Eliphaz, and Zophar, a man named Elihu, God, and angels. It begins with an introduction to Job's character. He is described as a blessed man who lives righteously in the land of Uz. The Lord's praise of Job prompts an angel with the title of Satan, accuser, to suggest that Job served God simply because God protected him. God removes Job's protection, and gives permission to the angel to take his wealth, his children, and his physical health, but not his life. Despite his difficult circumstances, he does not curse God, but rather curses the day of his birth. And although he anguishes over his plight, he stops short of accusing God of injustice. Job's miserable earthly condition is simply God's will. In the following, Job debates three friends concerning Job's condition. They argue whether it was justified, and they debate solutions to his problems. Job ultimately condemns all their counsel, beliefs, and critiques of him as false. God then appears to Job and his friends out of a whirlwind, not answering Job's central questions. Job, by staying silent before God, stresses the point that he understands that his affliction is God's will even though he despairs at not knowing why. Job appears faithful without direct knowledge of God and without demands for special attention from God, even for a cause that all others would declare to be just. And the text gives an allusion to Job chapter 28 verse 28. And unto man he said, Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. God rebukes the three friends and gives them instruction for remission of sin, followed by Job being restored to an even better condition than his former wealthy state. Job chapter 42 verses 10–17. Job is blessed to have 7 sons, and 3 daughters named Jemimah, which means, dove, Keziah, cinnamon, and Karen Hapach, horn of eye makeup. His daughters were said to be the most beautiful women in the land. In the Greek Old Testament Book of Job. The Greek Old Testament of the Christian Bible has a revised and updated final verse that claims Job's genealogy, asserting him to be a grandson of Esau and a ruler of Edom. This man is described in the Syriac book as living in the land of Ossus, on the borders of Idumea and Arabia, and his name before was Jobab, and having taken an Arabian wife, he begot a son whose name was Enan. And he himself was the son of his father Zer, one of the sons of Esau, and of his mother Basora, so that he was the 5th from Abram. And these were the kings who reigned in Edom, which country he also ruled over, first, Balak, the son of Beor, and the name of his city was Denaba, but after Balak, Jobab, who is called Job, and after him Asom, who was governor out of the country of Thaman, and after him Adad, the son of Barad, who destroyed Madiam in the plain of Moab, and the name of his city was Gethaim. And his friends who came to him were Eliphaz, of the children of Esau, king of the Thamanites, Baldad sovereign of the Sakians, Sophar king of the Minians. In other religious texts. In addition to the Book of Job, Job is mentioned in several religious texts. Judaism. He is mentioned in the Book of Ezekiel. Christianity. He is cited as someone who held fast to all the ways of justice in the deuterocanonical Sirach. He is praised for his perseverance in the Christian epistle of James. He is the protagonist of a pseudepigraphal book called The Testament of Job, Mormonism. He is also mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants, one of the 4 sacred texts of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints (LDS Church), Islam. He is discussed as a prophet in the Quran, Bahá'í. In the Bahá'í writings, a lengthy tablet was written by Baha'u'llah, the first part of which is focused on Job. The tablet is often referred to as the Tablet of Patience or the Tablet of Job. Job in Judaism. A clear majority of rabbis saw Job as having in fact existed as a historically factual figure. According to a minority view, Job never existed. In this view, Job was a literary creation by a prophet who used this form of writing to convey a divine message. On the other hand, the Talmud in Tractate Baba Batra 15a-16b goes to great lengths trying to ascertain when Job actually lived, citing many opinions and interpretations by the leading sages. Job is further mentioned in the Talmud as follows: Job's resignation to his fate. When Job was prosperous, anyone who associated with him, even to buy from him or sell to him, was blessed. Job's reward for being generous. David, Job and Ezekiel described the Torah's length without putting a number to it. Job was in fact one of 3 advisors that Pharaoh consulted, prior to taking action against the increasingly multiplying Israelites in the Book of Exodus. As described in the Talmud, Balaam urged Pharaoh to kill the Hebrew newborn boys, Jethro opposed this decree, and Job, though personally opposed to the decree, kept silent and did not protest it. It is for Job's silence that God subsequently punishes him with his bitter afflictions. However, the book of Job itself contains no indication of this, and to the prophet Ezekiel, Yahweh refers to Job as a righteous man of the same caliber as Noah and Daniel. Christian views. Christianity accepts the Book of Job as canon in its Old Testament. In addition, Job is mentioned in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. The Epistle of James, James chapter 5 verse 11 paraphrases Job as an example of patience in suffering. Job's declaration, "I know that my Redeemer liveth," Job chapter 19 verse 25, is considered by some Christians to be a proto-Christian reference to Christ as the Redeemer, and is the basis of several Christian hymns, as well as the opening scene of Part 3 of Handel's Messiah. However, Jewish Bible commentators and scholars point out that Job insists on a divine hearing in his lifetime. Cf. Job chapter 16 verses 19–22. He is commemorated by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod in their calendar of saints on May 9, by the Roman Catholic Church on May 10 pre-1969 calendar, and by the Eastern Orthodox Church on May 6. He is also commemorated by the Armenian Apostolic Church on May 6 and December 26, and by the Coptic Orthodox Church on April 27 and August 29. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints also affirms the existence of Job. "Thou art not yet as Job, thy friends do not contend against thee, neither charge thee with transgression, as they did Job." D and C 121–10. Latter-day Saints hold in high esteem the life, example and righteousness of Job, and consider him a model of perseverance and endurance to the end. Islamic views and Quranic account. In the Quran, Job Arabic, Abe translate. Ayyub is considered a prophet in Islam. The narrative frame of Job's story in Islam is similar to the Hebrew Bible story, but, in Islam, the emphasis is paid to Job remaining steadfast to God, and there is no record of his bitterness or defiance, or mention of lengthy discussions with friends. Some Muslim commentators also spoke of Job as being the ancestor of the Romans. Muslim literature also comments on Job's time and place of prophecy, saying that he came after Joseph in the prophetic series and that he preached to his own people rather than being sent to a specified community. Tradition further recounts that Job will be the leader of the group of those who patiently endured in heaven. Philip K. Hiddey asserted that the subject was an Arab and the setting was northern Arabia. The Quran mentions Job's narrative in a concise manner. Similar to the Hebrew Bible narrative, Islamic tradition mentions that Satan heard the angels of God speak of Job as being the most faithful man of his generation. Job, being a chosen prophet of God, would remain committed in daily prayer and would frequently call to God, thanking God for blessing him with abundant wealth and a large family. But Satan planned to turn the God-fearing Job away from God and wanted Job to fall into disbelief and corruption. Therefore, God allowed Satan to afflict Job with distress and intense illness and suffering, as God knew that Job would never turn away from his Lord. The Quran describes Job as a righteous servant of Allah, God, who was afflicted by suffering for a lengthy period of time. However, it clearly states that Job never lost faith in God and forever called to God in prayer, asking him to remove his affliction, and Job, when he cried unto his Lord, saying, Lo! Adversity afflicteth me, and thou art most merciful of all who show mercy. The narrative goes on to state that after many years of suffering, God ordered Job to strike with thy foot. At once, Job struck the ground with his foot and God caused a cool spring of water to gush forth from the earth, from which Job could replenish himself. The Quran says that it was then that God removed his pain and suffering and he returned Job's family to him, blessed him with many generations of descendants and granted him great wealth. In addition to the brief descriptions of Job's narrative, the Quran further mentions Job twice in the lists of those whom God had given special guidance, wisdom and inspiration IV, 163, and as one of the men who received authority, the book and the gift of prophethood v. 84. Local traditions regarding Job. There are at least 2 locations that claim to be the place of Job's ordeal, and at least 3 that claim to have his tomb. In Palestinian folk tradition, Job's place of trial is Al-Jura, a village outside the town of Al-Maidal, also called Ashkelon. It was there God rewarded him with a fountain of youth that removed whatever illnesses he had, and gave him back his youth. The town of Al-Jura was a place of annual festivities 4 days in all when people of many faiths gathered and bathed in a natural spring. To the northwest of the depopulated Palestinian village of Deir Ayyub is an area which, according to the village belief, contained the tomb of the prophet Ayyub, the biblical Job. The town of al-Sheikh Saud in the Hauran region in Syria has been associated with Job since at least the 4th century AD. Karnan was mentioned in Eusebius' Onomasticon as a town of Bashan that was said to be the location of the house of Job. Agiria the Pilgrim relates that a church was built over the place in March or February 384 AD, and that the place was known as the town of Job, or Civitas Job, according to Agiria's account. The body of Job was laid in a stone coffin below the altar. According to tradition, Hammam Ayyub is a fountain in the town where Job washed himself when he was sick, and is reputed to have healing powers. Another holy artifact in the town is the Rock of Job, known in local folklore as the place where he sat when he was afflicted with the disease. The city of Urfa, ancient Edessa, in the Harran region of southeastern Turkey also claims to be the location at which Job underwent his ordeal in a cave. The location boasts an Ottoman-style mosque and madrasa that runs as shops today. A well exists within the complex, said to be the one formed when he struck the ground with his foot as described in the Quran. The water is considered to be miraculously curing. The whole complex underwent recent restoration. The tomb of Job is located outside the city of Urfa. The tomb of Job is also said to be situated in Jabal Kara outside the city of Salalah in southern Oman. Additionally, the Druze community also maintains a tomb for the prophet Job in the El Shuf mountain district in Lebanon. The Eyüp Sultan Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey, holds the tomb of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, a companion of Prophet Muhammad, not the biblical, Quranic Job Ayyub in Arabic, Eyüp in Turkish, though some locals tend to conflate the two. Gallery. See also Behemoth, Biblical and Quranic narratives, Book of Job in Byzantine illuminated manuscripts, Jobab ben Zerah, Prophets of Islam, Stories of the Prophets, Testament of Job. References. External links. Book of Job with Hebrew and English. Themes of Job. Summary of Job's life. Aristeas identifies Job with the Jobab mentioned in Genesis chapter 36 verse 33, a great-grandson of Esau. An international fraternal organization for young women based on the teachings of the Book of Job. The Story of Ayub Job. The same page is also available here. Job, Forest Park Monuments, NYC Department of Parks and Recreation 360-degree tour of Prophet Job's tomb in Urfa, Turkey.